1bitHeart is a story about making friends and solving a mystery that will affect the entire world. And in doing so, it also affected my world and how I perceive it. Before I played this game, I didn't really have any friends I could consider close, and I was a full-on hikikomori. But through playing this game, it changed me as a person, and made me want to become someone similar to Nanashi. Hi, my name's Elio, and this is my video on how 1bitHeart became a shining beacon in my life, and made my entire life better by playing it. It's a really personal story for me, but I wanted to make a love letter to this game by making a video. It might not be interesting, but I'm making this video for myself as thanks to the game. And maybe other people can relate to it too, you know? Or maybe people want to know why I love the game so much? So let's get started. Some trigger warnings here. Since this video is personal, I'll be touching upon these topics: child abuse, alcoholic parents, details on being shot by needles, suicidal tendencies like self-harm, and general agoraphobic behavior. As I feel this is a personally big part on why I love this game, and it takes up a good chunk of the runtime, I will not be giving timestamps to skip me mentioning these parts of my life. So if you'd prefer to not hear on such personal and potentially disturbing content, I recommend skipping this video. Before I go into talking about the game, I really need to talk a bit about my life and how I got to the point I was at before playing 1bitHeart. So, like I said at the start, I've always been a bit of a shut-in, even growing up as a kid. I lived with a single parent who was a bit of an alcoholic, so she'd often push me onto being watched over by my cousin. I came to love my cousin a lot for looking after me, and I found common hobbies with her as well. We enjoyed the same video games, and she would even give me gifts for Christmas of the games I told her that I wanted. I didn't know at the time that my cousin ever actually gave me anything, as she would give it to my mom, who would then rename them to be from Santa. As a kid, I had a lot of developmental problems. Actually, I still have developmental issues. Growth hormone deficiency and ADHD is a bitch. I couldn't speak very well as a kid and had to enter speech therapy to be able to pronounce my SH's, R's, and L's correctly. And I still do have trouble differentiating L's from R's to this day on occasion. I grew very slowly compared to my other classmates, and starting as early as first grade, I started getting made fun of for being small. There was one boy in my class that would often make fun of my size, calling me things like shrimp, dust, shorty, ant, maggot, and just generally anything you could associate with being tiny in a not-so-flattering way. Of course, I, in my infinite wisdom, wound up beating him up one day by punching him in the solar plexus, and he laid off after crying to a teacher about it. But still, being bullied is rough, even if you hit them in their solar plexus. And as I grew up, the bullying only got worse as my differences in size to everyone started becoming more and more noticeable. By 4th grade, my mom found out I had a growth hormone deficiency, and I started having to take shots every day. As a child, I was scared of needles and had to be held down until 5th grade to be given a shot. And I would often pass out from the needles injecting me. I would also regularly go to the hospital every 2 months to be seen by an endocrinologist, and had to quickly experience kind of exposure therapy to get over my fear of needles in a way. I quickly came to realize that there was something wrong with me on a fundamental level that separated me from others. And not in the cool anime protagonist way. God, I wish I was an anime protagonist. There was a part of me that made me feel lesser than others, unworthy, and trash. It didn't help that while I was struggling with these feelings, my mom came to start dating her boyfriend. And at the end of 4th grade, we moved into his house that was a town away. it was really hard for me to make friends, and the only friends I had were 2 friends I had known since kindergarten, so this essentially separated me from my friends at a point in my life that I felt unable to talk to people. It didn't help that my mom didn't exactly raise me very well. If I was born 10 years later or so, I'd probably have become a Cocomelon raised kid, and that's a fate I wouldn't wish on any child. When my cousin wasn't babysitting me, my mom would just buy me things I wanted instead of spend time with me, which sounds good on paper, right? But when you have no one to talk to, it's not as cool as it sounds. Because of how my mom would never take me anywhere, I retreated into the video games that I played. I really liked anime games and was obsessed with stuff like .hack, Kingdom Hearts, Pokemon, Final Fantasy, and I also liked watching anime like Sailor Moon and Cardcaptors as a kid. A lot of my life lessons I learned through these pieces of media, or other stuff like cartoons, since my mom didn't teach me. But it also meant I didn't have much experience with talking to other kids. When we moved in 5th grade, I did become friends with 2 boys, one of which had a dad that was my mom's boyfriend's boss, so I'd see him often whenever my mom would take me to stay at her boyfriend's job. The 2 boys also shared a love of video games with me, and I'd often compete with one of the boys on who could finish a game first. But despite my closeness to these boys, I didn't actually share a class with them. We would spend recess together, but in class, I was always alone. Kids can be pretty terrifying. I learned that more in middle school, but I began to notice it in elementary. My desk partner began to bully me by putting disgusting things into my part of the desk, or she would kick me when we walked in a straight line for class. At the time, I believed her when she would tell me that they were mistakes and she didn't mean to do them on purpose. Then again, who the hell leaves chewed up food in someone else's desk like that, huh? I was a little too forgiving, I guess. But I couldn't help feeling bad about it. By 6th grade, one of the boys I was friends with moved away, and as we were getting older, the other boy and me found it harder to hang out. I was starting to be excluded from boy things. Being designated as AFAB, I had identified as a girl at the time, but I always thought of myself as a bit of a tomboy, getting along better with boys than girls. Aunt Elio, you wanting to always pretend to be a boy character and get upset when you're assigned a girl is such a cisgender thing to do. I tried making friends that were girls, but I found it a lot harder to bond with people due to my emotional state and my interests. My mom's boyfriend also proved to be difficult for me to live with. There's a ton of things that I won't go into, but he was abusive to me and his daughter, and even my mom. I once got hit over the head with a chair by him, trying to get him to stop hurting his daughter. I think that's probably the best example I could give to show his abuse without going into more details. Growing up as a kid, I dreamed about becoming people like Kite from .hack, Sora from Kingdom Hearts, or Red from Pokemon. But with my life becoming like this, I felt like nothing but a failure. Trash. That boy in 1st grade was right. Despite how hard my right hook into his solar plexus might be, I really was just a shrimp. I was dust. I was a maggot. I started becoming way too depressed. I stopped doing my homework and would just play video games all day, which I know, it's the life, but still, come on, I was depressed. My mom never made sure I did my homework, and so my failures were all just me to blame. I really was a failure, so why try hard at school when I can escape into being a hero for a few hours on my CRT, PlayStation controller clutched in hand? This wound up making me romanticize stuff like falling into a coma so I could just live in the video game world forever. An idea that came to me as a big .hack fan as a child. It was so glorified in my head that I even asked my mom to put me into a coma for Christmas one year. Definitely not the best Christmas request to give to your mom. Anyway, naturally, if you couldn't have guessed, I received poor grades. My 6th grade teacher had a talk with my mom and said that I'd either have to be held back or I'd have to go to a middle school for troubled children. My mom liked appearing like a good mother publicly, especially since she worked in the school system as a lunch lady. There was even a similar experience where I was found to not eat a lot and was malnourished because my mom wasn't feeding me, but my mom passed it off as I was picky and refused to eat food unless it was something specific I liked. Remember, my mom was a cafeteria lady. It was always my fault, not hers. Of course, my mom took the troubled children middle school route, so it looked less bad, but still framed me in a way that showed that the issue was me and not her. My mom even got transferred to my own middle school. Looking back, I found it odd. My mom transferred to my middle school only when I was going to said middle school, and then she transferred right back to high school when I started going to the high school that she originally was working for. She was always keeping an eye on me. Remember that girl from elementary school that I said bullied me? Well, my first week of middle school was fine. She wasn't there, and I started to get along with some people in my school that liked Kingdom Hearts or anime and 4Kids. But 2 weeks later, by some sick twist of fate, the girl that bullied me transferred into my classes. Sometimes I think my life is some sick comedy with how shit like this happen. It sounds more like an anime plot than something that actually happens to people, you know? At my middle school, we only had 2 teachers and only 2 separate classes. The girl pretended like I was her best friend, and I began to experience panic at the thought of losing what little connections I had built. I was right. They crumbled away. The girl went around telling people stuff I didn't know. I never even did figure out what she said, since I had no friends. All I knew was that I was being bullied. My school was very small, as you could probably tell by that, with maybe 150 students in the entire school. That went from grade 7 to grade 9. So, if you were bullied, it kinda became like the whole school was bullying you. I couldn't take it anymore. By the time I finished 8th grade, I was nearing my breaking point. I spent 2 years with no friends. My home life wasn't any better either. I felt useless. I felt like a failure. Now that middle school was coming to a close, I looked at high school with the thought that if elementary school was bad and middle school was even worse, then how bad is high school? I decided if I didn't make any friends by the end of my very first week of high school, that I would kill myself by jumping off of a building. I was scared that if I didn't jump off of a building, that I would chicken out any other method. There was a tall building a few blocks away, and I figured that I could sneak on top and kill myself that way. But that week didn't come as soon as I thought. My school had a mold issue, and so they shut the school down, and I had a longer summer break, going on for, I feel like it was 6 months, but I might be misremembering. All I remember was enjoying my summer vacation more since I didn't have any obligations. And while my home life sucked, for the most part, I was just ignored unless my mom and her boyfriend got too drunk and decided to bother me. I'd usually just be playing video games or watching anime in the quiet of my own room. By the time my school did open up, I decided that for my elective, I would take theater class. I wanted to become a voice actor for video games, since I would watch stuff on the TV about them. And I had come to have the belief that it's impossible for me to be a hero in the real life, but I can at least voice someone that is a hero. And in a way, wouldn't that make me a hero? In that theater class, I made friends. I became a bit more outspoken and even rambunctious in the class. And for once in a long time, I felt truly happy. made friends with two girls especially, who loved JRPGs and anime, and I found myself falling in love with one of the girls. Before graduating high school, though, my home situation got worse. Me and my mom moved out from her boyfriend's place, and initially it was a lot better. But my mom was still an alcoholic, and she still loved her boyfriend. I started noticing the alcohol on her, even when she had just come home from working at my high school as a lunch lady, and I started being stupidly stubborn, trying to fix her alcoholism, thinking that I could somehow cure her of this. I went through the fridge and would drain her whiskey down the drain. Then she started hiding it. So I would search her room, finding it in places like clothes baskets. Then she started seeing her boyfriend, presumably for the alcohol, since I kept draining down her, no doubt, very expensive whiskey. And then she started abusing me more and more. One day, I even tried leaving the house, and she had pinned me onto a chair, trying to choke me to death. I screamed enough for my neighbors to bang on the door to save me. I got my phone out and called my cousin, saying that I was scared. Before my cousin got there, my mom tried to get me to go into her car with me, threatening a double suicide. My cousin came and grabbed me and my cat, and I started living with her for a bit while I figured out what to do. Ever since then, I've been tossed between family members, and even lived with that one friend that I mentioned falling in love with. I eventually wound up being able to live on my own and separated from that friend, but my friend was having life issues, and me, being hopelessly in love with her, moved out from my own place to live with her. It was fine for a bit, even fun, but she turned abusive towards me and would do things to where I wasn't allowed outside of the house, or I wasn't even allowed to clean my own clothes. I had to rely on her, since she would padlock the door to the washing room. So again, I retreated into electrical entertainment. Around high school, I got a laptop and started getting into online communities more. I still found it difficult to talk to people, so I'd often just browse or speak anonymously. That anonymity took a turn for the worst when I found myself in another abusive relationship, now with my friend. I started frequenting sites like 4chan and wallowing in my misery, finding a place where I could take out my frustrations. It was unhealthy. I was unhealthy. I was unhappy. I felt like a failure. But one thing that I always have is my love for video games. In high school, I started really getting into RPG Maker horror games and webcomics like Homestuck. So I started shifting my consumption of media onto Tumblr naturally. I made a blog, but it was mostly me lurking on tags for games that I liked. I especially liked one game called Alice Mare. I always loved Alice in Wonderland for some reason. I can never really say why. Definitely don't like rabbits or anything. But I did really love the dreamy imagery of Alice in Wonderland, so maybe that's why I came to like games like Yume Nikki too. Definitely no other reason. Because of my love for Alice Mare, I became a huge fan of Miyoshiba. I also was a big Vocaloid fan, and a lot of the songs that Miyoshiba did art for wound up becoming some of my favorites. To this day, Giga-P is probably my most favorite Vocaloid P, and Miyoshiba often does art for their MVs, so I quickly became acquainted with Miyoshiba's work. I also was really into stuff like Persona and The World Ends With You at the time, even starting up an RP account for the protagonist of Devil Survivor, which I'd gotten into over that summer. That was my first time making an account where I actually sought out people to talk to. To be honest, the SMT RP community that I came to be a part of wasn't the best, and I wound up becoming friends with some people that reminded me of the friend that I live with. I had one friend especially that would force me to ERP with them, and they would often be very controlling of me. They also grew up in a depressing home and would lash out at other people. At that point in my life, I felt a connection with them since I understood that feeling. So I was okay with being treated that way. But something happened to change me. 1bitHeart. 1bitHeart got announced while I was living like this. It already had my attention peaked since it was a Miwashiba game, but the protagonist design even reminded me of the Devil Survivor protagonist, of whom I developed a bit too much of an attachment to. The day that 1bitHeart came out, I played it excitedly. My life was changed a ton with just that first chapter. Nanashi reminded me of myself. He would call himself trash. I was convinced that I was trash. At this point in life, my own Tumblr posts would say stuff like, posts from garbage, and such like that. I jokingly called myself trash, but I truly did believe that I was actually trash. He was a shut-in, and I was a shut-in. He even had a good relationship with his cousin, and my cousin was my closest family. Immediately, with the first chapter's release, I became obsessed. Misane, a character from 1bitHeart, became a hyperfixation for me as well. In the first chapter, she mysteriously appears on Nanashi's bed and convinces him to go and make friends while supporting him. Seeing her talk to Nanashi made me wish that I was Nanashi, that I had someone like that would appear before me during that long summer break during middle school. I wished that I could have someone like Misane in my life. I immediately began RPing as Nanashi on my Tumblr that day. Nanashi has, to this day, been the singular character that I have been able to write so naturally without spending hours analyzing or agonizing over what I was writing, concerned with it being out of character. I spoke from experience, as if I were the character, as if what he was doing was happening to me. I quickly became acquainted with other 1bitHeart RPers, some of whom are still my best friends to this day. I did get some pushback from the Devil Survivor friend that I mentioned. They didn't really like how I started RPing a pretty happy boy with my attitude changing, and how I was shifting away from the S&T community to a more positive community that was supportive of me. I started realizing that I didn't like talking to that friend, and started distancing myself more and more from them. The friends I made through 1bitHeart were all kind, just like the characters from the game. I started associating the game characters with my Tumblr friends, and I got even more attached to them. I started associating myself with Nanashi so much that I started calling myself Nanashi, seeing the characters as my real friends. I know that sounds a bit bad and maybe even delusional, but it was truly a healing experience for me. Everyone that was around me before I played 1bitHeart started noticing a change in me. I was happy. I would tell my IRL friend about my Tumblr friends, and I began to notice pushback from her, jealousy from her. She didn't like me making friends. She didn't like 1bitHeart. She'd point out that it was boring to her, and she didn't like Nanashi, or Misane, or any of the other characters that I liked a lot. But I would just shrug it off and go, I can see why you wouldn't like them, but I like them, and that's okay. As each chapter came out, I naturally made more friends. And some of my most joyous parts of life were the theorizing on things, the blogs my friends and I would open, or the videos we would make of the characters. By the time the last chapter came out, I realized that I was enjoying my life again. I had made friends. I related so much to Nanashi that it was painful sometimes. The feeling of being abnormal was something that was very pervasive in Nanashi and in me. In Chapter 4, Misane is separated from Nanashi, and you see her talk to characters like Natsukage about their opinion on Nanashi. And the scene with Natsukage was a bitter pill to swallow. Hearing characters say that it was hard to be friends with Nanashi. At this point, I was pretty similar to Nanashi in personality as well, if maybe a bit more chaotic. I made a Twitter when I saw other friends had one, and I was pretty hyper and always on, rambling about things that I was hyper fixated on, like Devil Survivor or Amnesia Memories or Pokemon. So again, Nanashi really did feel like me. Chapter 4 made me a little depressed because I really did love Misane as a character, and her leaving Nanashi that chapter almost felt like she left me, when in a way she was motivation for me myself to go out there and talk to other 1bitHeart friends, to talk to other people and make friends. I was nervous for the last chapter, but man, that ending. I think I streamed me playing it on some site like I think Rabbit to my friends that were on Tumblr. When I got to the endings, I really cried. The first bad ending had Nanashi choke his other self to death. It gave me flashbacks to my own experience with being choked, and even how I hated myself and wanted to kill myself. The normal ending didn't make it any better. He commits suicide in the normal ending, and not just that, he commits suicide by jumping off the top of the tower of the game. The exact same scenario I had for myself if I made no friends. So the endings of 1bitHeart are connected to the amounts of friends that Nanashi makes. If you make no friends, he chokes his future self, in a way just kind of dooming himself to be in a weird loop almost maybe. If you make some friends, but not a lot, you get the suicide off the roof ending. It felt uncanny. My whole experience with 1bitHeart felt super uncanny. I felt like Miyoshiba had looked at me specifically and made some fictional world with me as the protagonist with some extra powers to explain why I was so weird. And then the true ending. First, some explanations if you didn't play 1bitHeart. Nanashi lives with his cousin, Mikado, who turns out to be Nanashi from the future. In the future, he made a machine that wound up being misused by the government, and he feels it is his fault for it becoming that way, so he invents a time machine to go back in time. He meets Nanashi, posing as a family member of his. Misane travels back in time while following Mikado, because she also lives similarly to Nanashi, finding difficulty in talking to people and being very depressed. And it was only through Mikado that Misane was able to be a bit more confident in herself. She knew that Mikado hated himself, so she decided to meet the Nanashi of that time and try to help him before he winds up like Mikado, by helping him make friends. In that way, I also felt like Misane was talking to me, trying to prevent me from living the way that I did. I think I'm more like Mikado in a lot of ways than Nanashi. In the lead up to the true ending, Misane and Nanashi talk in the hallway, leading up to Mikado, who has planned to use the program to unite all people's thoughts, so everyone can be equal and happy, with no sadness or strife. This exchange happens.
What I feared most was that you would vanish from this world. That was scarier than anything.
That line sent shivers down my spine. I knew it was for Nanashi, but I couldn't help but associate myself with him.
It wouldn't matter if and when I vanished. Like everyone says, I'm worthless. I don't think anything of being unhappy. I don't mind.
For the longest time, I thought the same way as Nanashi. I'm worthless. And it's okay that I'm unhappy. I don't deserve to be happy. And because I'm so worthless, it's fine if I disappeared. I don't have a name. I don't have a me. I want to fit in like someone's lost puzzle piece. This, too, resonated with me. I started calling myself Nanashi, not just because I related to him, but because the name Nanashi, nameless, felt perfect for such an unremarkable person like me. I related to Nanashi, and began calling myself him and meeting people and identifying as Nanashi because I wanted to be him. I wanted the friends. I wanted someone like Misane. I too want to fit in, like someone's lost puzzle piece. I wanted to be the protagonist of a game while still being myself, not just the voice of one. Nanashi felt so natural to jump into, like a light piece of fabric that was draped over me, hiding me.
All pieces have their own shape. Even you. You have one.
I start feeling a pain in my throat. Something's building up inside of me. I know. The more time people spend with me, the more they feel a certain feeling. One they didn't feel to start with. And that's fine. In fact, it's correct. I don't know why there's something wrong. So it must be myself that's wrong. Out of billions, I'm all alone. It doesn't matter if I exist or not, does it? I nod. All my friendships didn't work out. No one wanted to talk with me. My online friends would probably hate me too if they came to know me. As long as I'm Nanashi, I can avoid being me while still feeling like myself. I can hide behind his character and shrug it off as being a Nanashi thing.
Are you done?
My heart stops. Misane is angry.
私、前にあなたに言いました。あなたが好きです。だから、あなたの不幸も幸福も分けてほしい。それは私にとって迷惑でも何でもありません。あなたはゴミくずなんかじゃない。誰かがまるでプログラムのようだとも言いましたが違います。七志さんは不器用で少しバカで空回りしやすくてちょっとだけ臆病で優しすぎるだけです。
I can't believe what I'm reading, and Nanashi's own dialogue corresponds with my own. Not sure how he should react. Misane tells Nanashi that she loves him as he is, and I begin to choke up.
笑ってもいいの？
はい。
怒ってもいいの？
はい。
じゃあ泣いてもいいかな？
By that time, my tears are already rolling.
俺のことなんか考えないでよ。気にしないで。構わないで。見ないで。認識しないで。俺にとってそれが一番幸せなんだよ。
私はあなたのことを考えたいんです。考えてしまうんです。気にしてしまうし構ってしまう。勝手に意識してしまう。でも私にとってはそれが幸せなんですよ。
I had no friends in real life. I'd try to get close and I'd be too weird or too depressed. I would push them away without realizing. Or I'd be a coward and run away, scared of seeing them no longer want to be my friend. I still am that way in a lot of ways. I got bullied all my life for being weird. Having a game with this scene felt so real, like someone was talking directly to me or for me. When I started playing this game, I started learning to make more friends, talking to people, when I did not do that before. I convinced myself that I was happy being alone in my room, better off not being with people because I would mess everything up. I would never make everlasting friends because of that. This game got me to open up to people. This game is why I'm here today. The friends that I made. After this ending, I decided to start going outside again, even when I'm afraid of it, even now. I'm scared to be alone, and that remains true. But it made me want to go outside. It made me want to go back to school and make friends again, and it did! This game was the best thing in my life that I ever decided to do. I would either be dead or still suffering alone if it weren't for this game. I wouldn't make the friends that I did without this game. The scene of Nanashi and Misane talking at the end is so special to me because of that. I wanted someone like that. I needed someone like that to tell me that it's okay. It's okay to be weird. It's okay for people to not like you. But there will be people out there that will like you. I'm really glad that this game came at the point in life that it did to tell me all of that. I know 1bitHeart isn't the perfect game. There's honestly a lot that I have issues with, like some low-key transphobia, Saya's whole friend events, the sequel game just in general, etc. But those negatives are such tiny scuffs on a standalone game that truly changed me. I don't know if Mirashiba will ever realize how much their games can change a person, and Mirashiba doesn't need to know how they changed one lowly person like me, but I will always support Mirashiba for making this game. I'm always thankful to Mirashiba for creating such a healing piece of media for me. I know that this video is mostly just me ragging on how much my life sucked, but it's because my life sucked that I resonated so hard with this game and why it was able to help me so much. And I honestly just wanted a place to talk about this, I guess, and show how important media can be to someone's life. This game changed me in so many ways. I don't think I'd be making videos the way that I do right now if it weren't for this game. And I have Nanashi and Misane to thank for that. I'm honestly not sure how to end a video like this, but I guess I want to echo Misane's words a bit here at the end. No matter how worthless you may feel, you are not worthless. And even if you feel everyone around you hates you, there will always be someone that will come to love you. If you think it's impossible, it is possible. You just have to keep trying. I thought that it was impossible for so long. And it was only after playing this that I could try to grow. I'm still not in the best situation. I'd say even I'm still in an abusive household even, that doesn't care about me and views me as worthless. But I'm trying. And that is so important for me as a person that just let life slip by for so many years. I'm trying to break free from this life without giving up. And it's all thanks to 1bitHeart. I know I spoiled a lot of this with this video, but if you haven't yet, please play 1bitHeart. It's such a heartwarming and heartrending game. I truly think it's one of the most healing games ever. I know that it's not for everyone, but it's so important to me. And if it can make other people happy, I want it to, like it did for me. Thanks for watching. I feel awkward doing YouTube speak for such a personal video like this, so I'm just gonna say you sat through a lot. I'm sure that I unnerved and worried you as you listened to my life story at least a little bit. I'm sorry, but thank you for listening to me. It's really nice to let off this steam and just talk like this. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching to the end.